What is going on, guys? This is the Set It Off Network. I'm your host, Michael Set It All. It is December 13th, day of our Lord 2024. And, guys, we got so much to talk about today. It has been a while since we have seen each other. Just the holidays, everything going on. We're not even going to get into it. It's just been a rough kind of couple weeks here at the Set It Off Network. But we've been covering things just like you guys have been, keeping up with the transfer portal. You had the season ending, you had the win against Oklahoma, you've got the Texas Bowl coming up. We've got tons of stuff to talk about. We're going to all break it down here. We're going to first start off with the transfer portal, which is where everybody wants to start. And that is like college football now. This is like free agency. It is full blown. I don't even think there's a way to compare it to anything else because it's unlike anything we've seen. Like, you have kids that go into the portal for reasons that may not be right for them. All right, you have kids that go in there looking for better playing time. You have kids going in there looking for better opportunity. And you'll never know, like, what is what, right? You see a kid from your team going to the portal and you're like, why is that kid leaving? And then you really don't know, right? All you can do is just assume, right? And that's not a good world to live in, especially putting it on kids these age. I wouldn't read too much into the transfer portal stuff. If one of the players that you really liked on LSU enter the portal, I highly think you should probably not go on Twitter and trash a kid. That goes with recruiting too, but that's like, I feel like that should be a given. So just kind of throwing that disclaimer out there that if somebody from LSU leaves, don't go commenting on them. Like, if it's another fan site, go comment, about that team that they went to or whatever. But don't trash kids on here. All right, what were we all doing at that age? If somebody walked up to you and offered you a better job for more money, would you take it? Probably. All right, so it's kind of the new world of college football. We're just having a hard time grasping it right now. But let's talk about LSU and the transfer portal and what's going on, who's leaving, who's coming, what the heck is going on, right? Because it is a mess. Like, the transfer portal in general is just an absolute mess. It gets crazier and crazier every second. You see somebody, you're refreshing the page for On3 to tweet about somebody being in the portal. It has been the craziest week covering this stuff and trying to keep up with guys entering, guys leaving, guys saying they're entering and then not entering, and it's just been a crazy week. It never disappoints. Let's just say that. So as it stands right now, LSU has 16 players in the transfer portal, and I know a lot of you guys, 16 players, that's a lot, right? And it is a lot, but you got to look at who's transferring and who is not transferring, right? You got to look at the landscape of college football as a whole, right? And you take 25% of your roster every year and donate that to the transfer portal every single year. Every single team in college football last year, the average was about 25% of your roster you're going to lose to the transfer portal for whatever reasons. More money, more playing time, better opportunities. Maybe they just don't want to play football for you anymore. I don't know. Whatever it is, 25% is around what you're going to get. So LSU is right into that threshold around where everybody kind of expected them to be. I see a lot of the bulk of the transfers probably being done with. You're not going to see 7 kids enter the portal tomorrow. You might see one here, one there, maybe towards the end of the season, maybe. But let's just focus on the 16 that are in there now and talk about the guys that maybe you wanted bigger roles for. Maybe they're leaving for other opportunities. I would think the most impactful one is clearly C.J. Daniels, right? The wide receiver had tremendous upside, was a tremendous safety blanket for Garrett Nussmeier. This kid didn't drop anything, and this kid was going to take another step into that role, and it kind of bugged me when Brian Kelly said that he was staying, and they were talking to each other about staying, and then all of a sudden you see him in the portal. It kind of just didn't make any sense to me. How all that stuff went down, but kids have this idea of what they want, and and obviously he saw that he was going to get more opportunity or something else from another school. So it is what it is. It's not like you're dying for wide receiver help. You're going to sign a couple kids out of the portal anyway. You really needed an elite guy to go in there and take that number one role, that Kyron Lacey role. So you were just kind of hoping that CJ Daniels would kind of move into that role and then you could supplement that way. But, it is what it is. But the guys out of the portal for LSU that probably are the most impactful, I would say, are CJ Daniels. You have a guy like Deshaun Womack and JVR Suggs that I thought were really going to take into their new roles into 2025 and hit it in stride. Like, Deshaun Womack was this 5-star kid out of the Maryland DMV area, tremendous talent. You saw flashes of it at times, but then you go late in the season and you kind of start hearing rumblings that he's not meeting the team standards, whatever that means. He gets suspended for the Florida game, and he doesn't play very much he doesn't play at all in the last 3 games. So once I saw that, I kind of figured that's where this thing was going to be trending. But like I said, that was just a guy who was going to step into his new role of probably being a every down player that you're going to have to supplement in the portal now. But LSU was going to add an edge rusher anyway, and hopefully they take this new portal approach and they go add an elite guy, and then your loss of Deshaun Womack isn't as great. The thing I'm always going to say with the portal affects your depth more than anything. It's why we are seeing so much parity in the game of college football, because teams can't stack up like they used to. Your second and third string players are not waiting around for their opportunity, and I hate that because I think a lot of kids miss out on the development side of this, and they just go chase that starting spot immediately. And I get it, man. Like, I was an athlete growing up. I understand that want and need to play. And so I'll never fault a kid who's chasing playing time. Like, you're there to play football, and if you're not getting there the chance to play, I completely understand why you would want to leave. But the problem it's created well, it's not really a problem. I don't think it's a problem. I just think it's something that teams have to deal with now. It's your depth is gone, right? One guy goes down here, one guy goes down there. Like, you're supplementing guys that are probably true freshmen, probably haven't played a lot of experience, and it puts you in a handicap because you can't just sub out a 2-year guy who's been waiting in the wings for his turn. You have to go to a true freshman or a portal kid that you just needed to fill a roster spot, and it's leaving these teams out on an island. And they're trying to figure out how to navigate all this stuff, and LSU is one of them for sure. You go look at their 2023 class. I think there's like 15 kids that have entered the portal from that 2023 class, which is 2 years now. So these kids have had time to develop. The guys that have stayed have developed into great roles for the team. The guys that didn't develop as quickly, they're hitting the portal, and they're going to go take their talent somewhere else to see if they can find better development somewhere else. And like I said, I can't blame any of these kids for making this decision, because if I was in their shoes and I wasn't playing, I'd probably feel the same exact way. So let's talk about the more positive side of the portal. And everybody's heard it by now. Brian Kelly's press conference talking about NIL, talking about the portal and everything going on with that. And he was so clear about their approach in the portal this season. And God, I hope he is not just talking out his neck, because LSU has to hit this portal cycle super hard. I'm tired of going to get role players. I'm tired of going to get guys that are filling roster spots. All right, when you go into the portal, it should be for guys that are going to make an impact on your team that year. And the last couple years, you've been going there and you haven't been spending no money, and you've been getting guys that weren't getting offered by the big universities, and guys that probably weren't SEC caliber type starters, and you are putting them into your lineup, and it is shown. That is why you have been 10-3, and now 8-4, because the guys you're replacing are SEC caliber players, and you're replacing them with non-SEC caliber players, right? You've had tons of turnover because of the coaching staff changes and stuff like that. You need to bring in veterans. You need to bring in impact guys. I don't care if you go sign the, you know, 15 players and you go sign the number one portal class. I want guys, I want 7 to 10 guys that are going to make an impact this year on your football team. You need to go get edge rushers. You need to get a corner. You need to go get safeties. You have a guy like Sage Ryan leaving. You have a guy like Jordan Gilbert, who wasn't very good this year. That cost you football games. Those are the guys you have to replace with SEC caliber players that can start day one. This isn't no building through high school. This ain't none of that. This is go get your starters and let's see where the chips fall. All right. You need to go get offensive linemen. I don't care if Brad Davis just signed 8 offensive linemen last cycle. I don't want true freshmen and first-year players on the offensive line. LSU has to be built to win now. Fans are getting so damn tired of going 10-3 and 8-4 and just being on the cups of being a good team. LSU fans want to win, and they want to be in this playoff one day. And you're not doing that if you're out there putting the freshmen in there and just letting them eat and developing. Like, no. Go in the portal. Go get your guys. All right? That's all I'm going to say about that. Obviously, a little heated there. But let's talk about some of the guys that LSU is in it for. You have a guy like Jakeem Jackson out of Florida. A guy Corey Raymond recruited, and he was extremely good. While he was there, he started a couple games his true freshman year. He was starting the first 2 games of the season this past year before he had a season-ending injury, and you really need cornerbacks. You had a couple leave in the portal. This is a guy who could easily come in and start day one, though. This is a guy who was a starter at Florida, right? And so you bring him in. He has 2 years of college football experience. He's been lifting. He's been doing all this stuff. He has 2 years under his belt. That's who I want coming in, replacing guys, not a guy that's a true freshman coming out, whether he's a 5-star or not. And then you have a guy like Barrion Brown out of Kentucky, a 1,000-yard receiver. His freshman year was a freshman All-American, and a guy who's going to do wonders if he can land at LSU, because I think if he can maximize that potential, that's an NFL draft guy. Great size, 6'1", tremendous at catching the football. This year had a career low, though, under 30 catches. It was just a rough year for the Kentucky offense, and not one that was really beneficial to receivers, if you're catching my drift there. You have a guy like Nick Anderson out of Texas, coming from Oklahoma, a guy who set the freshman Oklahoma touchdown record as a receiver. There for the Sooners, his freshman year, missed all of 24 with a injury. It looks like he's going to visit A&M and LSU this weekend. I would probably lean as probably A&M being the guy for him as of right now, but that's definitely a name to keep an eye on. And then Luke Haas out of Arkansas, tight end. You've obviously lost Mason Taylor. You've lost Kamarian Pimpton. You really only have, J.D. LaFleur now coming back or coming into your class. So you're going to have to get a tight end, a starting caliber tight end like Luke Haas, and then you're going to have to go get a blocking tight end as well. But Luke Haas is a name that LSU fans unfortunately might remember well, because that 2023 football game, that kid torched you as a freshman. He was all over the place for that Arkansas team. Not a fun night in Tiger Stadium where LSU barely edged out Arkansas. Not a great Arkansas team at that. But it looks like it's Ole Miss and LSU there. He just visited LSU on Wednesday or Thursday, and then he was just at Ole Miss the following day. So those are kind of the names right now that we're all hearing. There could be certain guys that enter in the portal later on in the week that maybe we're not covering right now. And we'll definitely be getting on that. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and keeping up with all of that stuff. So, all right, the next thing I want to talk about is Brian Kelly and LSU football in the grand spectrum, right? Because a lot of people are stressing out right now, and it is. I get it, man. Like, it is a tough time to not only be a college football fan, but just like understanding how all this stuff works and not seeing results has really hampered those expectations that a lot of LSU fans have had. So if we're looking at year 3 and Brian Kelly of what he's done at LSU so far, we're looking at a guy who's won 10 games twice, possibly could win 9 games this year, and has just been on the cusp of being one of those teams that could take it to the next level. And I think that's probably the most frustrating part, because you can't really say he's doing a bad job because you're still winning a lot of games. But you can't say he's doing a great job because you're not getting to where the expectations are here at LSU. So you're kind of met in this funky middle zone where, personally, I feel like Brian Kelly is squeezing all the potential out of these football teams. You go look at 2022, 2023 especially. Like, how many coaches are getting 10 wins with those two rosters and those two types of seasons, you know? And in year 3, the expectation was for them to take that next step. And I understand why in the past year 3 was the year. But you have to take it into account. Like, as much credit as I give Brian Kelly for squeezing this talent out of this team, every single year he squeezes the most talent out of this team, you also have to give him fault, because he's the reason why you're so talent deficient, because he made bad hires. He got hired in, he hired guys on the defensive staff that weren't good. He hired a recruiting coordinator that wasn't good. But, you know, as pissed off as I am about that and how he set the program back because of that, I also have to give him credit, because it takes a lot, and it takes a real determination for winning to do what he did. Because a lot of those guys came up in the profession with. A lot of them are close friends, guys he's had on staff for a long time. And he got rid of them all. The entire defensive staff was gone in a wink. And so you start year 3 with a completely new defensive staff. Not only a completely new defensive staff, but then you go and lose your offensive coordinator to Notre Dame, who clearly knew what he was doing, because there's been a lot of questions about offensive coordinator this year for LSU, and obviously it wasn't just a plug-and-play thing where it was just Jane Daniels making all these plays. Like, he schemed a lot of that up. Mike Denbrock is doing a tremendous job at Notre Dame, and you're missing out on 30 years of play-calling experience for a guy who's called plays for one season. And that's not, I'm not trying to sit here and knock Joe Sloan. I think Joe Sloan did a good job this year, and I know a lot of people don't believe that, but I do think he did a good job for what he was dealt. I think they need to find a running game. I think it's ridiculous that you had that offensive line and you couldn't run the football. But in the grand scheme of things, you have to look at year 3 in a vacuum. You replace your offensive coordinator and you replace your entire defensive staff. That is not an easy thing when you don't have an elite roster. And LSU does not have an elite top 10 roster in college football, I believe. You had a great offense. The receiver room was good. It wasn't great. You had a first-year quarterback coming in who had a lot of college experience, but not a lot of game experience. So that takes time to learn things when you're seeing them at 150 miles an hour instead of in practice. So there was going to be a learning curve there. And I think a lot of this stems from the whole season openers thing, and like, you can never start the season off on the right foot, and I get it, man. Like, it is a very frustrating thing that LSU cannot win the season opener, but I do believe that Brian Kelly is doing the right thing here. I think he did the right thing getting rid of that staff and not hanging on for one more second, because what happened in 2023 on that defense could never happen again. And it sets you back this year. There's no doubt it sets you back, because you had guys go into the portal that maybe could have played, that did, or you had guys that entered in the draft that maybe could have come back and been better and helped you, and you lost those guys. And then now you're teaching a whole new system and a whole new way of life on the defensive side of the ball to a bunch of younger kids that, you know, that maybe aren't ready to be elite top tier players in the SEC yet. There's potential there, but they're not there yet. Like, let's just call it what it is. They're just not ready. And you go and look at who LSU's throwing out there on defense and the depth issues, and you can see why the results were what they were. The defense was tremendously better this year too. So you made it completely huge strides on the defensive side of the ball. And then now with the offense kind of coming back down to reality, because what Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas did was never going to happen again. Once that came back down, you kind of met in that happy medium, right? And that's where you get your 8-4 from, because you improved significantly defensively. That brought you back down to like the middle of the pack. And then your offense dropped off because of not being able to run the ball, not having the receiver talent that you've had in the past, and having a first-year quarterback. So your offense met down at the middle and your defense met down in the middle, and then that's kind of where you got it from. And that's kind of how the season played out all season. You saw the highs, you saw the lows of what this team could be. You saw the Ole Miss game where, you know, you're thinking this team is a bona fide national championship contender, and then you watch the next 3 weeks and you're like, what the hell just happened? Because that's what LSU was always going to be. It was the ebbs and flows of being up and down and up and down. And the great teams are always consistent, whether it's consistently, you know, maybe they have an off game, but when they have an off game, they find ways to win. I've always said that great teams find ways to win when they don't have their best pitch. And you see that in Georgia and Alabama and Texas and all these elite teams that go and play lackluster game. Wow, like, oh wow, they only beat so and so by 3 points. It's like, hey, I don't care, they won. And I think a lot of LSU fans would feel the same way if they would have just won some of the games they were supposed to win and maybe had control of. I think you'd feel a little bit different. This season was one where, I mean, it's 5 or 6 plays that change the outcome of your entire season. I mean, like, that's how close the margins are when you play this high, intense style of football in this league. Like, this SEC is not for the weak. Like, you're going in there, you're playing at South Carolina, a team that went 5-7 and now is competing for 10 wins. Like, you have to deal with the Tennessees, the Alabamas, the Ole Misses, the Texases, the A&Ms. Like, you have to go play at Cal. It's completely different than it is in any other conference, right? If you don't bring it week in and week out, you can get beat on any weekend. That's including Mississippi State. That's including Auburn. Like, you've seen it all year long. Like, you have to bring your A game and find that consistency. And I think LSU is going to be on the right track. If they can get the kids out of the portal that can bring in that veteran leadership and impact starting caliber players in the portal. They said they were going to spend money, all right, and we're going to maybe do a podcast in a month and we're going to be trashing them because they went and got a bunch of bums out of the portal, all right, and I hope to God that's not the case, because if you're going to talk about it and you're going to get the fan base to engage and donate money, and then you're going to not go out there and spend it on the best guys, then what are we even doing this for? So hopefully we're here in a month talking about LSU's tremendous impact portal class, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. So make sure you guys check us out on the Set It Off Network on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time.